The Financial Survival Network, helping you survive and thrive in the new economy. For a free financial survival toolkit and newsletter, sign up at kerrylutz.com. KERRYLUTZ.com.
Listening to the Financial Survival Network, and I'm here at Silver Summit 2011. We're listening to Bix Weir talk about silver manipulation and the true price of silver.
Eric Sprott said all the guys in this room, plus the ETFs, makes up the entire demand that the mainstream says. So everybody in that room who raised their hand, they aren't counted in silver demand as an investment.
Right.
It's wrong.
Right.
It should be more like
everybody's trading futures on the COMEX, so they get jacked anyway.
1,000 to 1.
Right.
1,000 silver derivatives are traded for every 1 ounce of gold pulled out of the ground. It's ridiculous.
So when's the merry-go-round end?
Well, if you ask me, it almost ended in 2008.
Yeah.
We're on the brink again.
The wheels came off the bus.
I mean, it could be Europe next week. And once Dexia went down, Dexia was a huge derivative player.
What about Erst? $5.2 billion out of nowhere. Where did that come from? They passed the stress test with flying colors, right?
Well, the stress tests are a joke. Yeah.
Well, they didn't look at the off-budget, off-balance sheet.
They don't have to put them on their balance sheet. Nobody knows what they got. So I'd say next week things start.
Yeah, well, today it looks like it's. You can sense
it's
the
still
fight.
rigged. You can tell with
you feel it?
The volatility between gold and silver. They'll move up. Silver moves higher and lower, but they'll move up in the same tick. It's the same computer program kicking in.
Yeah.
We're going to bring silver up to $32. We're going to bring it up to $50, and then we're going to slam it to try to cover all our shorts.
At what point do they raise the margins to the point where the COMEX actually becomes a proxy cash market?
Oh, they can do it at any point. They did it to the Hunts. The reason the Hunts got screwed is because
they changed the rules.
No, well, the Hunts should never have been playing in the futures and options market.
Yeah, they had enough physical.
They weren't trying to manipulate the price. They were going long silver.
Yeah, they thought the system was collapsing.
Some say 60. They were in with some Arabs. Maybe 100 ounces of physical. Then they went into the COMEX and bought futures and options, getting a little greedy, up to 90 million ounces.
Yeah.
JP Morgan owned, 125 million shorts?
Yeah. I found like his whole... It was an interesting argument that he made, and you could see that it was like a legally crafted argument as to why the markets kind of are
Jeffrey
functioning.
knows who he works for.
Yeah.
He was involved in the very early gold rigging where Robert Rubin traveled around all the bullion banks and said, you should lease your gold to us. We'll sell it in the market. We'll give you 1%. We'll keep the price of gold down.
What about the rumor that the Germans wanted their gold back? Do you think that was true?
Yeah.
And we kind of told them, sorry, we don't have it.
One of the most interesting things that I thought was when they were interviewing Obama when he first got into the presidency, and Nightline or something was going around a full day with him. And he was in his office, and in walks Larry Summers and Austin Goolsbee, who was, they're all economic advisor. Yeah.
They fled. Subsequently,
they said,
fled the
we
ship.
have an issue with Germany, and they're filming all this, and Obama says, oh, okay, and Summers says, well, things have changed, and all of a sudden he goes, we're gonna have to take the cameras out, and they cut the cameras, and the cameras are rolling, saying, well, something important came up, we have to leave now. It's really interesting.
A day in the life, huh?
Yeah, and they were talking to Merkel about prolonging the manipulation of gold.
Well, how long can you really manipulate a market?
Well, they've done
this is a record,
since 1971. It's computers. The computers have made it possible. But the U.S. now wants to end it.
Yeah.
There's so much debt we can never pay back. Who wins if we end it?
We do.
We're the largest debtor nation in the world.
Yeah, well.
We win.
Yeah, well, that's inflation. People should be borrowing to the hilt.
banks.
On the melt up, the hockey stick, where you can't play this game anymore.
Exactly.
Is that
You're right.
Well, it's the transition, right?
Yeah. But I think I don't think we're going to hit that moment. I think the derivatives are going to go off first, destroying the banks.
The 1.6 quadrillion.
Yes, it's almost hysterical, and you couldn't do that without computers.
Right.
And like,
These days you can trade a billion shares in a blink of an eye if you have a computer program, and the CFTC is not stopping you. You can flash crash silver to zero, shut the market down, say, okay, let's start fresh somewhere else.
how can it be a good idea to sell insurance on something you don't own?
Ask the AIG.
Then it becomes just a gambling bet, casino, right?
The idea was to hedge risk, but every contract you add is a new form of risk. You don't hedge it, you move it to somebody else, and then every contract in front of that is a little extra risk added on, and that's how we hit the hundreds of trillions of dollars of derivatives.
If you read, what's his name, Michael Lewis's book, The Big Short, and they were just dumping it on AIG, and then all of a sudden, it's like they said, you better not buy any more of it. Maybe this isn't a good idea that you should own all this.
Maybe now.
And that was 2 years before, and then,
But AIG is interesting because if you look at there's a big silver short that needs to be protected. JP Morgan has it right now.
Still.
Yeah, Bear Stearns had it before, right?
I think they're the only, the bankers are the only seller. No, they covered a lot. Yeah, they did. They can't get all the way out, but they covered a lot.
Huge.
But it started at Drexel Burnham back in the 80s. They went down. It went to AIG. Then who was that guy, the Attorney General, Spitzer? He went in there to stop silver manipulation. They moved that silver short when they busted AIG. They kind of busted him. Back when they took the founder and charged him with all this stuff. They took that.
Greenberg.
Yeah.
Right.
They took that short and they gave it to Bear Stearns. Bear Stearns. Everybody's who held that.
Bear died the day it hit $21.
Exactly.
Remember,
every
hit a
single
record.
one who owns that silver short has gone down, and JP Morgan has it now, and there's 70 trillion in derivatives.
They can't go down.
Well,
They can.
I mean, they are the Fed.
Yeah. If the U.S. wants to erase all debt and go off the system that we're on, just take J.P. Morgan down. They take the whole system down.
Yeah. Well, they have to go down because it's a mathematical impossibility to keep issuing more and more debt. My grandfather, like an immigrant, said, anytime you're paying interest on interest, you got a problem. And we're paying interest on interest on interest. It's insane.
That's where you reach that Minsky moment. That's what they do.
Yeah,
If you read like the Gold Commission report, 1981, released in 1982, they came out and said the conclusion was, we're not going to do anything right now. But unless we get our budgets under control, we think the gold community is going to become larger and louder, and then we'll have to go back to the gold standard. Ever since that moment, all we have been doing is printing money.
Yeah.
Reagan started off with the Star Wars projects.
A lot of money.
He was trying to bust the system.
Yeah.
Ever since 81, they've been. The question wasn't when do we go back to the gold standard. It was how do we implement it? How do we get there?
How do we not have chaos?
How do we get? Well,
Should have Collins say that it would be predicted 5 years. I don't know how he came up with that, but I thought
I'd say
that.
5 months.
5 months.
With that close,
Things
huh?
that Europe's not going to last another month. They won't last. They go down. Every single bank in the world will go down because they're all interconnected with derivatives.
So I have a question maybe you can answer in your infinite wisdom. Regarding the powers that be, whoever you want to call, do you think that everything that's going on right now is engineered by design and it's right on course with their plan, or would you say that they've lost control?
I'd say both. I think both sides want to crash it.
I have the feeling inside that they've lost control, and this is a runaway train.
They have, but
that's why
when it comes to the crash, they are losing control, and there are people in the United States working to take them out.
Yeah.
But right now, both sides want to crash the system for their own purposes. The bad guys want to crash it because they know they're in trouble, and they want to institute martial law and all that in the
World
U.S.
government.
The good guys want to crash it because they want to get rid of the bad guys, go back to our constitutional way of law, because that has been gone. You look at our courts and some of the rulings, you can kiss the Constitution goodbye years and years ago. But if we do have a crash, and everything Ron Paul has been predicting for the last 30 years happens, the whole nation's going to turn to Ron Paul and say, "You were right. Help us out of this." That's why he ran. He's been assured he's going to be our next president. He wouldn't have run.
Is that true?
But I don't believe it.
If the banks crash between now and January, he'll be the only guy.
So I figured, I've been figuring that they've been trying to keep the wheels on the wagon through next year's election. All this QE is to keep it going. But I think
all the QEs did crash it.
I think it's looking more like the wheels can stay on the wagon through the election. So
I don't think it's going to last throughout the year. I think Europe will go first. There'll be 2 weeks of chaos there, and then it'll hit us hard.
So what happens when it crashes?
Well,
Where does that leave
the big
us?
question. Everybody loses everything in their bank.
Yeah, that's a given.
All 401ks. There's mass chaos because who owns these stocks? You think of high-frequency trading stocks? That's ownership of a stock going back and forth and back and forth. When the bell rings and everybody says, "I own this mining stock," how many other people are going to raise their hands and say, "I own it too. I own it too. I own it too"?
So are you in agreement with James Turk that we're looking at a Lehman moment between now and the end of the year?
Yeah.
The black swans are circling.
Bigger.
Yeah.
They tried. 2008 was an attempted takedown of all the banks. Hank Paulson came into Congress, said, "Give us $700 billion." They leveraged it up to 10 trillion.
16.
Then it came out that the Fed lent 16 trillion to foreign banks mainly.
Because they said it was a subprime thing, but it wasn't necessarily the subprime. It was the derivatives on the
derivative.
Yeah.
That weapon of mass destruction is still hanging out there.
If you look at just say the bank's balance sheet, you take that 23 trillion that we used to bail out, you could have paid everybody's mortgage, everybody's credit card, which would have paid the banks whole.
But that's not the idea.
That's not the issue.
So it's good to be a debtor.
The derivative,
right? It's good to be a debtor now.
Well, I don't recommend going in debt to buy silver because everybody asks, "Why don't I just run my credit cards up?" It's bad karma. But I also don't recommend paying off your debt.
Yeah, you want
Wait for the
interest
crash.
only. Interest
Wait for
only.
the crash. Be ready to be pissed at the banks like everybody else. It's already started in these protests.
Yeah.
What I like about these protests is there's nothing specific they're mad about except they're mad at the 1% and they're mad at the banks.
No, they're mad at student
But
loans.
there's a whole lot of reasons each person is out there, so there's no way to stop it.
They don't have the right message, but they have the right something.
Their anger is focused somewhere over here.
I interviewed them down the street here. I interviewed them. And there were 4 people. Okay, it's really interesting. First one said anyone making $200,000 isn't being taxed enough. So I said, so they're paying 50% of their income now. How much do you think? What do you think a good number is? They don't know. I said, what do you think of the? Yeah, I said, what do you think of the Federal Reserve? You think they have any responsibility? Well, I can't think that.
All
far.
they know is their anger is pointed this way.
They're not old enough and educated enough to know the details.
Exactly.
But they're large enough of a demographic, and they know that something stinks.
Yeah, we all know
exactly
it.
it.
Don't we all wake up every morning and feel there's something wrong here?
And
It's like,
the big thing is going to be the WikiLeaks.
Matrix.
WikiLeaks has that computer disk of
Bank
all these
America, right?
Bank of America,
Yeah.
supposedly Bank of America.
Right.
But what's going to happen? The banks crash. WikiLeaks comes out with all the proof of fraud. Everybody in the world is going to stand up and say, "We're done with these guys." Well, yeah, it is. It's illegal transfer. It's the legal transfer of title in the MERS system and all that.
Yeah. I've been involved in that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like total cesspool. Total cesspool.
If people that go into the futures market keep getting creamed over and over and over again, right? Why do people play?
I want to interview when you have time.
Why do people play futures?
Well, it's mostly the banks in
wiped
there.
out.
Well, see, most of the weekends don't even play, and most silver investors here don't even play in the comics. It's the banks trading
So
back
it's
and
just
forth.
computers.
They're trading back and forth to each other. I said in my talk, 99% of all silver trades in these derivative world are the banks trading back and forth to each other. to set the price.
Individual traders
It's got
sitting at
nothing
their
to do
desks.
with silver, pulling silver out of the ground and finding a fair market value for silver. It's all about the derivatives of silver. That's how they set the price. Jeffrey Christian just proved it in there by saying the silver slam from $50 to $35 was a change in position on the COMEX. That's illegal. In U.S. commodity law, the COMEX, which are derivatives, futures and options, are not allowed to set the price. They're supposed to discover the price. That's the basis of commodity law. Jeffrey Christian just proved the manipulation point by saying it was the COMEX that drove the silver prices down from 50 to 25 or 30 and then almost
record of saying it trades 100 times the underlying fundamental.
This morning he said
400. 400.
And he's right. It is 400 times. And that's just on the London bullion market, which is supposed to be a true physical market.
Settle at the end of the day.
They net out at the end of the day, but during the day, everybody looks at the open interest and say, well, it's not that gigantic. It's big, but it's not gigantic. Open interest, that's just where they stop that day. It doesn't talk about how the price was set with trades back and forth every day. So yeah, it's a gigantic Ponzi scheme, and it's the derivative market will implode. Probably when the other credit default swaps and all that starts to implode in the coming months. But it will destroy everything we know of as free markets. And that's why the CFTC has been waiting for so long to put in position.
You're telling me no silver investor would go to the futures market to take delivery.
No.
So you can get silver at very low premium.
Eric Sprott tried to do it. What happened when Eric went in and said, I only want 15 million ounces because I'm starting up this fund. There's 40 million ounces in deliverable COMEX silver at this point in time. I'm standing for delivery. How long does it take to package it up and send it to me? 3 months. He couldn't get it. 3 months.
They don't have it, so they're buying.
He should have sued the COMEX. If you're saying you have deliverable silver, 40 million ounces, and you can't get 15, and 3 months later, and some of those bars were minted after he stood for delivery.
I'm sure they would have given him shares in SLV if he wanted it, right?
Yeah, I think they can now.
They can settle. They can settle in SLV,
SLV
and GLD.
Check this out. SLV, and I think it was 2009, on January 30th, end of year, the very last day of trading, they deposited 20 million ounces into inventory. The next day the market was open, they pulled out 20 million. One more turn. Now, first of all, to put 20 million in would have taken all these truckloads and deploy. There's no reason for that. But what it did is it rigged the annual report and say we have extra 20 million ounces of silver. That silver was never there. It was purely a paper inventory receipt fraud. Now he sent CFTC 100 different letters on that, and they're not doing anything because they know that if they stop silver manipulation and gold manipulation, the game is over for fiat money. You cannot have an unbacked currency if gold and silver are freely traded.
And you can't move the gold market, so they're using the silver market to move the gold.
Silver is easier to kill eventually. It's so small. I mean, if we tell Eric Sprott, hey, why don't you take all the gold that you've accumulated in all your funds, and tell everybody else to do the same, sell it and buy silver, the game would be over.
Look what they did to Central Fund of Canada when they announced another rights offering. They came in and slammed that stock. There's no premium, so there's no reason to do another share issuance. And they've kept it between and it never traded at a discount ever, CEF, in the history since the 80s. And all of a sudden, it's trading at 5%, which was a tip-off to savvy people. Get in there.
Yeah.
So, but house of cards.
It's rigged on so many different levels. It's gotten to be embarrassing.
That's one of the biggest questions I get because I'm trying to educate and teach the family. So I teach them the fundamentals, and we all learn that fundamentals trump technicals in the end. But in the short term, the technicals are trumping the fundamentals.
It's been since 1971, since we went off the gold standard, and in 71 they implemented the first computer rigging trading programs to rig the price of gold and silver. It's been going on ever since. It's just more visible now, but they haven't turned off their computers since the mid 70s when they instituted these computer programs.
They kicked in the high gear with the working group on financial matters under Reagan.
Yeah, financial markets, right? At the end of the 80s, yeah, and they're still out there. And if you want to talk about crooked, that's the right word. Goes to Geithner at Treasury when he was the head of the Fed in New York. He was the computer whiz, rigging the markets. what do? We keep fighting the fight. We do this. We yell, I want the silver mining companies to stand up and say, this is fraud. You're killing our industry. But these guys haven't done anything.
Did you get the good news this morning? So 12:30, the stock market was up 204 points. Gold is up $24, and silver is up 84 cents. That was at 12:30.
But is that good news?
Well, compared to yesterday.
You got to remember.
On a train wreck every day?
That's where they put it. That's where they decided to put the stock market. That's where they decided to put the silver market. And that's where they decided to put the gold market.
It's all coming down.
They can put it at $5. They can put it at $1,000.
Okay, well,
it all depends on where they enter that day in their computer.
It's the weight that counts, right?
It opened up at 20.
Jim Rogers said. Yeah, I know. I saw it.
90 cents, right? Thank you very much.
So just stick with the plan of decapitalizing the banks. Just take your cash out and buy physical silver.
That's the only way you can be safe. I love mining companies. Don't get me wrong. I'm mad at them for not joining the fight on manipulation for the last 10 years when we've been jumping and screaming about it. The problem with mining companies is you've got so much value in the ground. There is probably too much value in the ground. If there's a banking crash, the rest of the world, all 99% of us are going to stand up and say, where was the fraud? And where are we going to get a new form of money?
Why don't you go ahead and your own consulting company, go around all these...
I do, roadtoruta.com. Sign up.
Very much. I know that. Why don't you go and put a consulting contract together with all of those silver companies, band them all together, give them a strategy that they understand,
that's the thing, though.
And collect a nice dollar doing it.
I've been doing this for 10 years with Bill Murphy and the GATA guys. We've been fighting the fight. Scrappy little guys out there fighting these monster banks.
Yeah.
And we've been saying to the silver mining companies, get in and help. We need help. We're just a little bunch of nothings, but we see what's happening. It's their industry. It's their... I don't care how many derivatives...
My suggestion.
Yes.
Maybe they don't have the expertise that you have.
All they have to do is say, I'm pulling silver out of the ground. I want to get a fair market value price for it. I don't want to be valued in derivatives.
Yeah.
That's where the value is now. Everything, all derivatives. If the mining companies actually sell their metal to the bullion banks, and the bullion banks use that metal to run their little games.
Sure.
Why sell the bullion banks? Why not sell direct to consumers?
First Majestic.
Choose who you're going to sell.
First Majestic, you can buy online from them.
Yeah, but get that physical metal out of the bullion bank's hands.
That's a good start. You got to consult with them and tell them
I've been screaming it for 10 years.
Jim Sinclair has been telling them, and they
Bill Murphy.
don't pay any attention.
They'll take you serious. I'm not being sarcastic.
No, I agree with you. My frustration goes back 10 years in this.
Okay.
And
Ted Butler's goes back 30.
Ted is brilliant. That man is brilliant.
I've been married for 40 years.
Ted doesn't come out very often.
I feel like I've been married for 40 years, but not quite that long. I feel like I've been married for 40 years
I've been married
sometimes.
for 40 years, and it feels like 5 minutes, which is underwater.
God bless. That's too funny. Yeah,
Take care. I'm going to meet a railroad.
No, David Morgan's coming on too, right?
right.
That'll be good.
It's a big excrement sandwich, and we're all going to have to